Amendment proposed, clause 12, page 8, line 32. At the end, insert the words as printed on the marshal list.
My Lords, I'm very keen on Amendment 33. I haven't put my name on it, but it's in the name of the Noble Lord, Lord Davis of Gower and Lord Sandhurst, that suggests this advisory board for the SIA, and with the intention of ensuring a collaborative approach to regulation. Why I'm keen on this is because one of my fears about the bill is that it could be one of those laws that effectively means the state abdicating responsibility for public protection and outsourcing it onto businesses and community organisations, with very much a kind of you're responsible for that. It's then policed by the regulator, and as I've mentioned on a number of occasions, I'm worried about the damage that might do to civil society. So I really like the idea of addressing some of the issues raised by the Noble Lord, Lord Carlisle and Baroness Hamwee earlier on, I think, about how we ensure that there's a more collaborative approach to this. And I would like civil society not feel that they're being done to or dumped or put in charge of public protection on their own. So it strikes me as a good way of approaching that. I put my name down specifically on Amendment 34 because I do think one of the important things about this amendment is a review that considers all of the implications of the bill some way down the line. We need to be able to consider trade-offs all the time. I think it's wrong to suggest that those of us who are worried about trade-offs are, I think it was suggested in an earlier debate or group by the Noble Lord Carlisle and the Noble Lord Harris of Haringey, that those of us who were trying to consider cost-benefit analysis and trade-offs were being somehow glib about the possibility of people being killed in a terrorist bomb, that we had somehow some kind of higher risk appetite, was the phrase that was used, a higher threshold for risk-taking, whereas actually the important and responsible thing to do would be to ensure that we always considered safety first. But I think that we have to acknowledge... Oh, yeah.
I do think the Noble Lady is misinterpreting what I said. I said that in making these judgments, you had to have a risk appetite. You needed to do that explicitly. I was not saying that any particular risk appetite was right or wrong. I was saying it should be made explicit. I certainly wasn't suggesting that the Noble Lady was therefore glib about people being killed. I was merely saying that is the trade-off, and that anyone making these decisions has to be clear about the trade-off that they're making.
Thank you for that clarification, and I'm relieved to hear that. I think it was the bit at which somebody said, how would you answer the situation when 199 people were killed if the link was 100 or 200, if you see what I mean. And all I'm saying is there's often a conversation like this when we have a conversation about safety and risk and responsibility. So I like this amendment because it introduces into the debate about this bill an opportunity some months down the line to have a cost-benefit analysis of whether the bill has actually worked or not. When I first came into this House, it was at the height of lockdown period, and quite a number of times I, rather tentatively at the time because I was new, but along with others, called for a cost-benefit analysis, and I kept saying, will all of these measures really, can we just assess whether they, in the name of safety, are the only way that we should proceed? And again, was told that we had to be very careful because old people were going to die and so on and so forth. You're familiar with the arguments. The reason I mention that is we can now, in retrospect, look back and say, actually, many of those old people were locked up in care homes and greatly suffered. We can say about young people, when those of us argued that we should take a cost-benefit analysis to closing schools, we now have a crisis of worrying about pupils and the impact that lockdown had on them. there's a discussion that the government is initiating about the cost of impact and the impact of lockdown on people's employment habits as we presently speak. So I think it's sensible, with a bill such as this, to introduce a review that will give us the opportunity to do a cost-benefit analysis. This is particularly important because we have a regulator introduced into this, and I think the noble Lord Davis has explained that we need to be able to see whether this regulator is the appropriate way of getting what we would like, which is more public protection, or whether in fact it undermines some of the important aspects of local regulatory interventions. I thought we had a very interesting group just before the break when the noble Baroness Suttie raised the point about the apparent number of regulatory regimes that each venue already has to adhere to in terms of licensing and so on. And I think that this gives us an opportunity to see whether the central regulator is the appropriate way of ensuring that we keep people safe or via premises and terrorism.